For a good chunk of my life, I've always been fascinated by award shows. Things like the Grammys, the BET Awards, and heck, even the Kids' Choice Awards always had me tuning in to see if my favorite song, movie, or television show would win something. This is no different for video games. G4 was literally one of my favorite gaming channels because of the amount of gaming content they used to put out. And one of my favorite things about the channel was the Game Awards show they used to host like every single year. So of course I had to tune into this year's Game of the Year Awards. Now there were a lot of decent games nominated, and if you watch my recent videos on this channel, you should know the game I was rooting for. But with the results out, I think some games did rightfully deserve the categories they won, but the Game of the Year award itself, I think the results had a lot of people scratching their heads. And I can't lie, I am a little bit salty about what happened, but I came up with the realization, these awards don't really matter. I think we're finally at a point where we look at these award shows and just shrug it off, because at the end of the day, the people voting don't really have a say on what happens. Anyways, my name is Quasi, and welcome to a new segment I like to call It's Just a Discussion. So doing a little bit of research for this video, I realized there's a lot of game awards, but the one that we'll be discussing today took place a couple days ago, or weeks because Lord knows how long it's going to take me to get this video out. Now I want to just take a look at a couple of categories and talk about who was nominated, who won, and my opinion on the whole thing. So let's just jump into it. Now there were some categories that I personally just didn't vote for, like Esports Team of the Year, Creator of the Year, and Esports Host of the Year. These categories always strike me as strange because it becomes more of a popularity contest in a sense. We're voting for Game of the Year, each of the nominees have its own unique qualities, making it a hard choice, but with esports and content creator nominees, it really boils down to who has the bigger fan base. Take a look at 2018, it wasn't that big of a surprise that Ninja won Content Creator of the Year, given how big he was. Like, I feel bad for the other nominees because like, what confidence would you have knowing that the person you're competing against did a live stream with Drake, but that's just my take on it. Now for the best RPGs, there were 3 games in particular that really caught my attention. Genshin Impact, Persona 5, and Final Fantasy VII Remake. The thing about Persona 5 is technically it didn't release in 2020, and Final Fantasy VII of course is a remake. However, I'm glad that Final Fantasy won because out of those 3 games, I feel like Final Fantasy really pushed the boundaries of what a remake is. Even though there's already a roadmap put out for the game, they completely revamped the combat system from turn-based to action, and they made some really good changes to the story that made the experience overall new. So I'm happy with the results. The only reason I wouldn't necessarily go all in for Genshin is that despite the gameplay being really damn addicting, I feel like the pay-to-win aspect of the game really hinders it from being good. And despite it being very popular, I'm not that surprised that it didn't win. The last category I was kinda satisfied with is Final Fantasy VII winning Best Score. Although I feel like Ghost of Tsushima's score was really good, I can admit that Final Fantasy VII's score was way more memorable than Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima's score kinda blended in with the background, there was nothing really memorable about it. And after this, the next couple categories, the winners were kinda strange. So one red flag that I picked up in this entire award show is that The Last of Us 2 took a lot of awards home. This is also the same issue I had with the Crunchyroll Awards. They just took a popular show like My Hero Academia and put it in every single category. So basically it was like half of the nominations. But in this case, with The Last of Us 2, yes, the game is popular in a sense that a lot of people liked it, but when you take a look at the fan reaction, the game wasn't really that well received. So what really baffles me is the amount of awards that it won. So let's just take a look at some of them and discuss it. So the first one that I kinda understood was The Last of Us 2 winning Best Narrative. Now I know it's unpopular, but I strongly believe that the narrative that The Last of Us 2 was trying to tell was actually pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot, but the execution is where it falls short. I hate using the term, but the game was a bit too edgy for its own good. I understand that with this game, the main focus was human conflict, instead of survival like the previous game. But I felt like Ellie was just pointlessly killing people just to kill them, which made the game feel a bit silly in a sense. There was a lot of people Ellie killed that I felt like she didn't really have to. Now I don't want to spoil the games for those who haven't played it, but let's compare it to the other nominees. So with Final Fantasy VII, like I said, it's a remake, so many people have already experienced the story. But the biggest factor about this is that the story isn't complete. Square Enix decided to go with the episodic route, so the game's narrative is technically incomplete. And with Ghost of Tsushima, I feel like the narrative was good enough to rival The Last of Us, but the only thing I'll say about the main story is that it was really just straightforward and almost predictable. But however, if you incorporate the side quests, I feel like it gives the narrative a boost in quality. But I can understand if side quests give more story and understanding of the world than the main story, then the discussion about if it's a good narrative kinda is in the air. But despite my opinion, there are countless videos and articles out there dissecting The Last of Us 2 story, pointing out plot holes, bad writing, and countless other flaws. And from the community reaction and feedback, a majority of people didn't really enjoy the story. So I'm still kind of left wondering, how did this really win? Okay, so what really threw me off was best action adventure game. Of course, if you haven't noticed the trend, The Last of Us 2 won this category. This one kinda got me. If you take a look at the description, it says, for the best action/adventure game, combining combat with traversal and puzzle solving. So the last part, combining combat with traversal and puzzle solving, should really stand out. And if we take a look at The Last of Us 2, how the hell did this win this? When I think about combat and traversal, Spider-Man Miles Morales should just instantly hit. And even though The Last of Us had decent combat, I would never say it was better than Miles Morales. And you might say it's crazy, but I'll even go as far and say that out of all the nominees, The Last of Us 3 wasn't even top 3. And after it won, I just realized the awards don't really mean anything. So let's take a look at the award that everybody was anticipating. The Game of the Year. The nominees are pretty strong and there were really some good games. And if you were to ask me personally, I'd give it to Ghost of Tsushima. I don't really have to talk about the game because I already have a video on my channel about everything about the game. So if you haven't seen it, yeah, I'm gonna put a card above or in the description. But realistically, I really expected Animal Crossing to win. Because if you take a look at what happened when the game released, it was huge. I don't remember a single negative thing being said about the game. And not only was it well received in the US, but worldwide. So you would think, given its resume, it would have some type of leverage in this category. But no, somehow, The Last of Us 2 won. And yes, I'm a little salty, and I'm definitely not the only one. Because there's a lot of people saying that the results are rigged, and they're discrediting the entire award show. So I think people are starting to really realize that these award shows don't even matter. And I feel like it's gonna be a matter of time before no one really tunes in anymore. So I did a little more research because I initially thought that when we vote in these categories, the people's vote reflect the winner. But no, actually there's a group of people who actually vote for the Game of the Year. And our votes kind of just influence them. The problem with this is that in reality, our votes don't really matter. I'll be honest, if I was one of the people voting, no matter what the public opinion was or the popular vote, I'm going all in on Ghost of Tsushima. So who's to say that the people on the panel weren't influenced by their personal bias? The Last of Us 2 isn't necessarily a bad game. I do think people give a lot more shit than it deserves, but how could you sit there and try to convince people that as a video game, it's better than the likes of Animal Crossing, Ghost of Tsushima, and freaking Final Fantasy VII Remake? I think the biggest issue with The Last of Us 2 is the fact that everybody knows that it underperformed. When it released, everybody remembers all the articles, videos, and tweets calling out all the narrative flaws. So when it just snubs so many awards, it's like, do these awards even represent gamers? But that's everything I have to really say about the topic. Hopefully next year, when we talk about Game of the Year, it's more of an emphasis on public opinion. Let the voices be heard, because if you're really trying to convince me that The Last of Us 2 is the game that everybody thought was Game of the Year, despite it having a 5.7 user score on Metacritic, then you're just crazy. But it is what it is. There's no point in crying over spilled milk. So what's your opinion on the Game of the Year results? Did your favorite game win anything, or are you upset about some of the results? I would love to know in the comment section down below. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. My name is Quasi, and this was just a game, or a discussion. We'll work on that.